for you, Anthony, what was life like growing up for you? What was it like as a kid?
Well, life was great. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, so I'm a native. And when I was really young, I lived in Sunbury,
Okay.
and we had quite. We didn't have a ton of land, but we definitely had a couple acres. I was involved with 4-H, raised chickens. We had pet chickens. We had showing chickens. Um, Looking back, it's a little crazy to me that that was my experience for the first 6, 7, 8 years of my life. Picking blackberries in the backyard and just not a care in the world. And so, but after that, my parents separated before I was born. So I come from technically a broken home, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love both of my parents, and really, if I'm going to be honest, it gave me, because my dad at the time was living in Hilliard, and then I was living in Sunbury with my mother. So I was going back and forth, commuting from one side of the city to another, and I
Yeah.
feel as though it gave me a nice head start at getting familiar with the lay of the land.
Yeah.
So, and of course, both my parents are great. Growing up too, my mother owned a cleaning company. She went to law school, but had 3 kids, and she realized that she probably wasn't going to be, a successful lawyer to have the same amount of time and attention to give us as kids. So
Sure.
she chose us over that career. But then she realized she needed to do something to make the moolah. So she founded her own cleaning company and connected with some pretty heavy hitting, um, like corporate executives, business owners, and so forth. And that at that point, we had moved from Sunbury to New Albany, which is where I grew up primarily in my childhood. So
I got
sorry, that was a
to
little long-winded.
No, I no. Well, first of all, I have to go back to the whole 4-H and the chickens thing because in my family we have a story. There was a flea market that we would always go to when I was growing up, and one time my brother had the great idea of convincing my parents to buy chickens from the flea market, and I think it was like a dozen of chickens, right? I think 11 of them turned out to be like roosters or something like that. It was like so,
Those
but like so
those
I
suckers are mean
yeah,
sometimes.
I grew up with chickens off and on, and what was it about chickens that drew you for the 4-H and showing chickens? Because normally I haven't really met many people in the 4-H that came up through 4-H, and that was the animal.
Well, the thing is, it was for the experience. I wasn't super steeped in it because we weren't like, we're not a family that comes from Delaware County, or a farm
Yeah,
community where it's instilled in us necessarily. But I think really my mom actually was the one who wanted us to have that experience. So, and
yeah,
I'm so glad, because having moved to New Albany a few years later, that was a much different experience in
mhm,
both positive and, um, I don't know, not negative ways, but just different ways.
sure,
So I'm glad that I had that. I call them my paradise years, because when you're that young and you have all of the land, it seems, in your perception, in your head, to just roam and do whatever and have not a care in the world, it's a great way to start, you
yeah,
know. So
yeah.
I'm grateful to my family for providing that experience for me
Did you
and my.
have any? Yeah, no, I mean, did you have any hobbies or interests growing up?
Yeah, when I was, I think I was 11. My family, especially my dad's side of the family, but my family in general, is very musical, for generations. So my mom recognized that, and she basically told me and my siblings, "Okay, your family is way too musical not to be at least trying an instrument. So you have to pick an instrument." So I thought about it, and being the sassy little child that I was, if you can only imagine, I was like, "Fine, I'll play an instrument. I choose piano though, and it needs to be a baby grand piano." So, and that
We're
obviously
not
the
gonna we're not gonna
and
half-ass it here. We're gonna get the main one.
I mean, thank God I grew out of that attitude for the most part, because that's a little unfair, a little inconsiderate, considering. However, my parents found a baby grand mahogany 1920s piano for me. And so I just took to it. I took some lessons, but honestly, I never took to the reading of the music.
Yeah.
I kind of sat down and played by ear. And so now I write songs and lyrics
Oh
and
wow.
sing and all of that. So it has definitely carried through to my adult experience.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Let me ask you this: Were you have you always been an entrepreneur, even like growing up? I mean, because obviously, like your mom has the background of creating her own business, right, and her own company.
Right.
Obviously, now as a real estate agent, you're kind of doing the same thing. Was that natural to you back then, or no?
I had the example for sure, which I'm forever grateful, as we all should be whenever we're given an example and early, especially early on in life, because it can really leave an impact. And I'm much different than I was when I was young.
Yeah,
Aside from the attitude, sometimes I was a lot more quiet. I kept to myself quite a bit, and so I guess that allowed me a lot of time to watch and listen. And I tell a lot of people when I discuss where I come from and everything, being from New Albany, and also in my high school years, I not only attended New Albany High School, but I also attended St. Charles Preparatory School in Bexley. So I had some experiences in my adolescent years that allowed me to really listen and watch.
hmm,
And I learned a lot about how to interact with people, how to listen, but also how to stand up for yourself and for myself. And so I feel really grateful in my life in general right now, but I definitely feel grateful that I had that exposure to
yeah,
those lessons. And I think those all make up an entrepreneur, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I was an entrepreneur from the start.
yeah.
And I don't know if that's not a good answer or what, but
No, I
definitely
love.
grown into it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I bring it up because I want people to understand, especially in our business, that maybe they're thinking about getting in. Like, we're not out here like cutthroat, hardcore salespeople. I think some people have that natural ability, right? And that's just who they are, and they just happen to pick real estate as that vehicle, right? And then there's people, like myself, who I don't like, I can't sell anything, right? Like, I'm more of like advisory, type. And the one thing that worked with me, and I think why real estate works for me, is because typically it takes time, right? It's not you're going to come to me today and you're buying tomorrow, and I better get you hook, line, and sinker on that one phone call, right? Like, I can build trust and show you and guide you, and I know it takes time for that relationship to happen, which is why real estate works for me. And I love asking that question because I want people to know that you don't have to be this. It's not this cutthroat, make 1,000. Now you can make 1,000 dials a day if you wanted to, but that's not necessarily always our environment in order for you to have success in the industry.
Not my speed. Not my